This presentation on change is brought to you by Coy Allen, Subhash Chandra, Jonathan Hoyle, Tavia Jackson, and Peter Romano. Change is everywhere, a part of your everyday life. Change is the act, process, or result of altering or modifying something. It is a transformation or transition from one state, condition, or phase to another. It is a substitution, switch, swap, or alteration. We're not talking about nickels and dimes. Change happens. You have all seen change. Let's say your boss left a company in pursuit of his dream to become a circus acrobat, and now you're stuck without any direction. Rumor has it they've already hired someone to replace him. But what will happen with your job? What if your new boss is older, younger, a different gender, race, or religion? Will you have to start dressing up, come in earlier, or stay later? There are so many unknowns. Or consider this. Your company just got bought out by another company. There might be layoffs. Does this mean you'll lose your job? Perhaps you'll need to relocate. Maybe your responsibilities will change. You might get a new manager, or even new direct reports. When talking about change, we could even make it simpler than that. The weather outside. What's the weather like today? Do you know what the forecast is? Is there a storm coming? Maybe it's going to rain or snow. So what will you do to prepare? As you can see, change is inevitable. So why do we get all worked up? Most of the time, we let our emotions drive our response to change. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt had a very simple metaphor for this: an elephant and its rider. The elephant represents our emotional side, while its rider represents our logical side. The rider can hold the reins and appears to be the leader. However, when the two sides disagree about which direction to take, guess who's going to win? Most of the time, you can see change coming. If your boss is jetting for the circus and someone new is going to take over, things are going to change. If your company was bought out, it's unrealistic to think that nothing will change during the transformation into one company. Things are definitely going to change. Think of the very first moment when you recognized that a change was inevitable. Can you recall your first thought? Odds are that initial brainwave was some kind of resistance. You might have said to yourself, "Gee, I really don't want to do that." Or, "Do I have to?" At the first sight of change, we are ready to run in the opposite direction, or bury our head and hope it just passes us by so we can stay in our comfort zone. Change hysteria is emotional turmoil. Even changes that appear to be good things may involve a level of loss and uncertainty that makes people uncomfortable. People want stability, and when change threatens that stability, people start to resist the change until they realize that the benefits outweigh the risks. When people haven't done something before, they use this lack of understanding or knowledge in order to persuade their minds that the change is not something that they should move forward with. Let's look at some real examples of changes in the workplace that encountered heavy resistance. XYZ Grocers changed their incentive plans for their IT department in order to improve productivity of back-office functions. XYZ's executive management felt that employees that did not directly contribute to sales shouldn't have their pay tied to company performance. XYZ decided that all IT employees would be taken off the bonus plan and instead would receive an increase in base salary, equal to the average bonus payout over the last 5 years, specific to each position, as well as an increase in employer 401k matching funds. The rationale behind this change was that employees not directly involved in sales at the grocery would earn a consistent pay every year, irrespective of company performance. Believe it or not, the IT employees resisted this change. They didn't understand why their pay had to change, even though XYZ Grocery was performing very well. Rumors began to swirl that XYZ Grocery was positioning itself for a sale or even a buyout. Employees started looking for other job opportunities because they thought that the new compensation structure was inferior to the one which gave them a bonus. Before we talk deeper about XYZ Grocery's situation, let us consider a second example. TUV Motors implemented a corporate firewall in order to protect the network and the computers of customers and employees. Managers were fed up that employees were losing productivity every time the network went down. Sales even began to slide because customers were being held up as well. IT managers at TUV Motors decided that employees and customers were visiting suspicious websites and downloading unverified content that increased the risk of computer virus infection, which could result in a compromise of the company's sensitive data and at the same time reduce employee productivity and negatively impact sales. TUV Motors decided to install a corporate firewall that prevented its employees and customers from accessing untrusted sites. As you probably know, by now. There was resistance to this change at TUV Motors. Employees resisted this change because it impacted the way they conducted business. Once the firewall was implemented, they could not use, download, or install any application they wanted to on their computers, and to top it off, they were only allowed to use corporate-approved software. Customers too showed some resistance. While waiting for their cars to be serviced, many complained that they could not access their websites they wanted to, and thus rendering the network availability that is offered to them undesirable. As you can see, at XYZ Grocery and TUV Motors, what seemed like well-intended change was met by fierce resistance by those who were impacted. Change hysteria can be avoided by taking the right steps to implementing change. Those who study change often note that resistance to change can be avoided by proper communication, presenting a vision, and getting leaders to help influence the others that the change is good and necessary. At XYZ Grocery, management set up an anonymous survey to get IT employee feedback about the pay changes. Based on that feedback, managers realized that the goal of the change was not communicated very well, and so managers outlined for each employee a comparison chart explaining their old and new pay structure. The numbers showed that the employees that moved to the new plan would actually make more than they did before. At TUV Motors, they also realized that a clear vision and good communication was needed in order to combat the resistance. So they sent an email to employees displaying the number of employees that were actually affected by viruses and the costs to the company to resolve these recurring issues. The email contained statistics collected at other dealerships as well, in order to further educate the employees. Finally, they posted signs in the customer waiting areas explaining the new policy, resulting in higher customer satisfaction at the end of the day. Remember, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to preparing yourself, your colleagues, or your organization for change. Change is inevitable and there's no use fighting it. If you're not willing to step up and embrace a change or commit to a change with both your heart and your mind, then someone else will. Change is not something to be afraid of. As Dan and Chip Heath say at the end of their best-selling book, Switch, when change works, it follows a pattern. By being honest and appealing to both your mind and your emotions, small steps can take you a long way to changing that which is hard.